Hello and welcome, my dear students, to day one of our IELTS writing mini course. For anybody who doesn't know, today we are starting the mini course, and the topic of the mini course is task 1 in the IELTS writing exam. So, in the writing exam on the IELTS, you have two tasks. The first one is to describe a graph or some data that they give you. And the second one is to give an opinion essay. We will be learning how to write the task 1 essay. And I think anybody can write an amazing task 1 essay if they just know how to do it. So that's exactly what I'm going to teach you today. Let's get started. Today, first we are going to talk about all the things you should do and know before you start writing your essay. So there's a lot of things that we need to take care of before we actually start writing down our answer. And that's exactly what we are going to be doing today. In day 2 and day 3, we will be writing an essay together, but today we are just laying the groundwork. So let's go ahead to the first topic, and here we are going to talk about how to understand task 1. And just in general, understanding what you need to do in the IELTS exam. So let's talk about how are you being graded on the task 1 essay. There are 4 criteria. The first one is task achievement. The second one is coherence and cohesion. The third one is lexical resource. And the fourth criteria is grammatical range and accuracy. So, task achievement refers to how well you answered the topic. Did you mention everything that was important? Did you stray away from the topic? Did you just overall do your job, right? Coherence and cohesion means how good were you at making the reader understand what you wanted to say, right? So coherence and cohesion can be summed up to, is your writing understandable and is it logical? Lexical resource is just a fancy way to say vocabulary. Is your vocabulary good enough to talk about the topic at length? Are you using the same vocabulary over and over again? Or do you have a wide vocabulary, right? All of this goes into lexical resource. And then grammatical range and accuracy seems pretty self-explanatory, but I really want you to focus on the range part here. Because accuracy is, are you making mistakes, right? But range is how diverse is your grammar. So those are the 4 criteria. So when you are at the exam and the examiner is trying to give you a score, right? They're trying to grade you. They will usually give you a score in every one of these criteria. So for example, if your task achievement is a 7, then coherence and cohesion is a 6, your lexical resource is maybe also a 6, and grammar is a 7, you would finally get a score of 6.5. Okay? So that's how your score is decided in the IELTS writing exam. Now, let's talk about how to actually get a high score in all of these criteria. And before we do that, I do just want to point out some general guidelines for task 1. Things you should always do or not do. So first of all, your job is to describe the data, not explain it. This is really important. Another thing you should never do is never give your opinion. So in academic writing in general, your personal opinion usually doesn't matter. And especially when describing data in charts, it's really not a good idea to include your opinion. The last point that you should really take note of is to write at least 150 words. If you write less than 150 words, your score will go down. So it has to be at least 150 words. Okay, so those are the general guidelines. Always remember these, okay? Always, always, always. Now let's talk about task achievement. How are we supposed to get a high score in task achievement? Like I mentioned before, write at least 150 words, but I suggest sticking to 170 to 190 words. That's usually the sweet spot. You don't want to write too many words because then you're just wasting your time and you can lose coherence. If your sentences are too long and too complicated, it might not be that understandable, you know? So try to stick with 170 to 190. I think that's a great number, just in general. So, again, don't include your opinion. We need an objective style of writing, okay? You're never going to say, I see, I think. Even if you want to describe a chart and you want to say, I can see that this number went up. No, we don't say that. We can say, we can see the number going up in this chart, right? So you never want to write from a subjective point of view. And this is the most important one, okay? Describe key features. This one is the most important one. What does this mean? It basically means you want to talk about only things that are important and relevant. Remember, you have only 20 minutes to write the essay. So you're not going to be spending those 20 minutes writing about every single detail in the chart, okay? Because a lot of these charts, maps, graphs, they can have a lot of information. And it's really important to know how to see what is important information and what isn't. Like, for example, let's look at these two pie charts. We have here the type of media people consume in Canada and Australia. So we can see that, for example, in Canada, 40% of people consume television. But in Australia, 37% of the people consume television, right? So this is key information because it's such a large part of the pie graph, okay? But what isn't key information? Well, look at this, 2 and 3%, and it's not specified. This isn't important. We're not even going to mention this in our essay because, first of all, we don't know what it is because it's not specified, and second, it accounts for a very small amount of the population. Okay, so that's roughly how to determine what are your key factors. It's really important to not waste time and not waste your words on things that are inconsequential. Okay, so that's the most important part in task achievement, is actually writing about all of the important features. Okay, so a lot of my students, they kind of have trouble with that first part how to see what is important information and what isn't. So I thought of an exercise for my students to do so they can practice this, and so they don't waste time on the exam trying to understand and determine what are the key features. Okay, because for example, the first time you see a bar chart, it might take you a long time to figure out what's important in the chart and what exactly you need to write about. But the 10th time you see a bar chart, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I can see this, this, and this, and you just know everything very easily and quickly. Okay, so this is a practice. So step number 1, go to a website with sample essays. Step number 2, look at the task and give yourself 3 minutes to understand the graph. Okay, so 3 minutes. Put a timer on your phone. Write down in short points what are the key features of the task. So when I say short points, I mean short points, like write down 1 to 2 words for each point. And this should take you no time to do, right? This would be very quick. Number 4, check the sample essay to see if you pick the same key features as the writer. So I don't want you to write the essay, right? I don't want you to plan out the essay. I just want you to practice seeing what are the key features, and then you check the sample essay that's given on the website. I'll provide the website in the description box below. So you check the sample answer and see what did that writer decide are the key features, and see how is yours different or similar to theirs, right? And the more you do this, the quicker it will be for you to understand graphs and charts and so on. And you will waste less time on the actual exam on understanding what you need to write about, right? So, I mean, I can tell you write 5 essays, but it's so much quicker to just do this exercise 5 times instead of writing 5 essays. It's going to save you so much time. So this is the instruction for the homework, by the way. For homework, I want you to do this exercise 5 times. So before the next lesson, do it at least 5 times. I told you, you give yourself only 3 minutes, so it shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes for understanding and maybe 5 extra minutes for reading the sample essays, right? This homework should take you around 20 minutes. Okay. So yeah, and like I said, don't worry, the website with the sample essays will be in the description of this video. Okay, so that's your first homework assignment for this lesson. And that's how to get a high score in task achievement. Basically, if you understand the graph and understand what are the key features, you shouldn't have a trouble with this. And this is why we need to practice understanding key features. But now, let's talk about coherence and cohesion. So, what's really important with coherence and cohesion is that your essay is logical. It follows some sort of logical pattern, okay? So that's why it's important to plan your essay. You have 20 minutes to write task 1, but I do suggest spending at least 5 minutes planning it, right? In the planning phase also goes the understanding the chart thing, right? So first you look at your chart and then you plan out how you're going to write your essay. And it's completely okay to spend even 5 minutes planning your essay, because if you plan your essay well, it will be really easy to write it later on. And I would even say practicing essay planning is much more beneficial than practicing actual essay writing, right? Because you can do it much quicker And of course, you should practice writing as well. But if you practice making great plans for your essays, then every essay will be great. Okay? Or every essay will at least have a great structure and it will be coherent. Now, the next part, while we're at structure, use a good structure. Now, there are many types of structures for the task 1 essay. On the internet, you'll find a lot of different ones. But I like to use one very simple structure, and it works for all essays or all topics and tasks in task 1. So basically the structure is introduction, then we do overview paragraph, first body paragraph, and second body paragraph. In task 1, never write a conclusion. You don't need a conclusion for task 1. These are the 4 paragraphs you want to write. Introduction, overview, and then 2 body paragraphs. Sometimes you can have 3 body paragraphs, but that's very rare. And I usually don't recommend that. And we are going to cover how to write each of these in day 2 and day 3. Okay, so in day 2 and day 3, we will cover how to write the introduction, the overview, and the body paragraphs. So look forward to that. The last thing in cohesion and coherence is writing logical paragraphs. So the whole essay has to have a logical pattern. That's why we have this whole template, introduction, overview, body paragraphs. But the information within your paragraphs also has to be logical. So basically, you just have to make sure that it makes sense. Like one of my professors actually said something that I think it's really useful. And that's, well, when you read your writing, is it clear right away what you wanted to say? Is it obvious, right? If you have to ask, oh, what's that? Or I don't understand that, right? On the first time that you read it, then it's not logical, it's not coherent, and you should rewrite it, right? So yeah, that's how to get a high score in coherence and cohesion, and we will talk a lot more about coherence and cohesion in day 2 and day 3. Okay, next let's move on to this one. This is lexical resource, or as we said, vocabulary, okay? So how do we get a high score in lexical resource? Well, first of all, the most basic thing you can do is learn the names of the different types of graphs. For example, this is a pie chart. I can say it's a graph. Sure, I can use graph for almost all of them, but it's much better if you know the specific names of the graphs. So this is a pie chart, and then of course you have bar charts and line charts. But yeah. The next one is learn the essential vocabulary for writing task 1 that refers to describing trends and graphs. Okay? And this is usually vocabulary like, oh, we see a rising trend in the number of people consuming television. Or there was a sharp decrease when it comes to high school students going to the mall. I don't know, right? So either or. And I will provide the link down below for the essential vocabulary for task 1, and you should have also gotten my PDF for the essential vocabulary for task 1. The next one is learn the words by practice, not by heart, for task 1. So anytime you are writing a task 1 essay, you're practicing for your exam, I do suggest like looking up what word you can use, like refer to the website that I gave you and the PDF that I gave you for vocabulary, and just see, okay, which of this vocabulary can I use here in my specific essay? And when you learn it by practice, it will be much easier for you to remember it, instead of just like sitting down one day and learning 20 words, and then the next time you sit down to write, you don't know anything, right? So I do suggest practicing instead of learning by heart. And okay, another thing is stay away from casual language and contractions. Real quick, contractions are just, for example, this, she's. To contract something means to make something smaller or shorter. So instead of saying she is, in a contraction, you say she's. But in the writing exam, we don't want to do this, okay? We don't want to use contractions. We always want to use the full form, she is, okay? So also another type of contraction is, for example, this. Wanna, which means want to. Okay, so again, in the writing exam, you don't want to say wanna. It's very casual. We say it in speaking. We want to say want to. Okay, that's what we want to stick to when it comes to our academic writing. And let me explain the casual language as well. So, for example, there are certain expressions that we use only in speaking and expressions that we use for writing. Let's take these two expressions as an example. Let me just copy that. Okay, so the first expression I have here is add fuel to the fire. And the other expression is exacerbate. Now, add fuel to the fire and exacerbate have the exact same meaning, as in they mean to make a situation worse. So to make a bad situation worse, okay? But add fuel to the fire is an expression that you would use for the speaking exam, because add fuel to the fire is a very casual idiom, you know? So we don't want to use add fuel to the fire. Exacerbate, however, is a much, much better word to use for making a bad situation worse when it comes to academic writing. So that's just something you need to pay attention to when learning vocabulary for the writing exam. Now let's quickly talk about how to actually remember new vocabulary. And I have two strategies here on how to remember new vocabulary. Okay. The first one is study before bed. There's this one study that says that if you learn something before you go to sleep, the next morning you will remember it quite well. And it actually works. I mean, for some people better, for some people worse. But this strategy is a nice strategy if you like to read before bed, or if you don't mind revising what you learned during the day. The next one is called curve of forgetting. Okay, so basically this just describes on how we forget information. And this strategy uses this one study about the curve of forgetting to figure out how often should you review something in order to remember it. Because we've all been there where we just learn something and then we forget it like a few days later, right? I used to do that for a lot of my exams. I just learned something and then I forget it a few days later. But how to actually remember it, right? Well, if you review something in the first 24 hours of learning it, you have up to an 80% chance to retain that knowledge. Okay, retain just means to keep that knowledge in your head, to permanently remember it. And if you review it again after 6 days, you can retain 100% of the knowledge. So this is a strategy that you can use whenever you learn a new word, a new expression, or whatever it is. Review it again within 24 hours, so the next day, and review it one more time after 6 days. And I guarantee you will have a really easy time remembering new knowledge like this. So for your homework, I want you to use this strategy to learn the names of all the different graph types, okay? So I put the link to a PDF down in the description of the video, and there you will find the names of the different graph types. And it's really easy, it's only 6 words, so it's gonna be pretty easy to remember. Okay, so that was it for vocabulary. Now let's talk a little bit about grammar. And unfortunately, in this mini course, we won't be covering grammar because it's a far more extensive topic, and it's something that I cover in my full course. But I do want to give you some pointers and some resources on grammar and how to get a high score. Basically, what you want to remember is that range is more important than accuracy. If you want to get a 7 in grammar, you can still make mistakes. I mean, of course, it would be great if you don't make mistakes, but you can still make mistakes even for a band of 7 in grammar. But you can't get a 7 if you use only simple sentences or compound sentences or just very simple structures. You have to be using a variety of complex sentences. So there are about like 5 or 6 types of complex sentences, and you need to master them and write at least 4 or 5 types of complex sentences in order to get a high score in grammar. And I will leave a link below for an online lesson on IELTS Buddy that really explains the different types of complex sentences well. You can check that out if you want to see how to diversify your grammar. Okay, and yeah, that's it for today's lesson. To review, you have to practice how to determine key features of a graph or chart or whatever. So do that practice 5 times. And you have to learn the different types of graphs until the next lesson. And I really hope this was helpful to you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck with your homework, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.